Hey there everyone, and welcome back to a very special bonus episode of the Water Trio Astrology podcast. I'm here with my dear friends and colleagues Alicia and Cassandra, and we are taking a look at the charts of two people that have been getting a lot of media attention so far this year, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. So I know that you gals have been receiving questions about these charts. I've been getting questions about these charts. So we thought for our first extra news style episode, we would take a bit of a look at the charts of Meghan and Harry and just see what's going on astrologically for each of them. So we're going to start with Meghan Markle's chart. I'm going to pull that up on the screen so we can have a look at that as we go. And I think, Cass, you've got a few thoughts that you want to share about that chart to get us started.
For sure. Yeah, let's do it. All righty. So we've got Meghan Markle up on the screen. So the birth data is there in the center of the chart if anybody wants to take note of that. I guess the first thing I notice when I look at her chart is that there's only one planet above the horizon, and that's Mars. And so, if we cut the chart in half, thank you, Kel, from the Ascendant, Descendant axis.
I'll just act as the scribe today.
Thank you. And, and she's born at night, and this is the only planet. Of course, the nodes are there, but that sort of doesn't count. But yeah, we've got Mars. And so Mars is the ruler of her midheaven. And so, we could sort of say that obviously the career part for her is obviously, I guess there's a few ways we can look at it. Maybe a really central focus for her. Maybe it's where she likes to be the most visible. And it's obviously, Mars, poking its head up over the ascendant there does have a lot to say. It's in the first house. It's in its position where it's not happy there. Technically speaking, it's in its fall. She's born at night, so Mars is not as bad as it could be when we're looking at some of the qualities around sect. And so Mars rules the midheaven, and it also rules her fifth house. So we might look at this as two houses that are going to have central importance to her, or a level of where she's going to take charge or really be wanting to be more visible, as I mentioned before. So that's probably one of the first things that I would notice about her chart is just that Mars poking up over the ascendant. So then, of course, we would look to the moon, the moon being the ruler of the ascendant, and we can see it there. It's in the fourth house. And so she's one of those people in the early 80s born under the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction there. So we can see the ruler of her ascendant being the moon in Libra, and the ruler of her seventh house. Of course, we can't ignore the seventh house because it's all about her marriage and her husband right now. And so that is in the fourth house there too, sandwiched together. Okay, so this sort of on face value sort of is telling us, okay, well, obviously the ruler of her ascendant and the ruler of the seventh house, relationships are going to be really important to her or influential to her, or the partners that she pulls in. So let's look at the partners she's pulled in this time. Okay, so he's kind of famous. And so what we can see there is that she's pulling in great partners. She's got Saturn is in the exalted position in Libra there. So she's pulled in a prince. It's a pretty exalted demonstration of what an exalted seventh house ruler can bring. Of course, it's a pretty exceptional example, of course. But what we can also see there that, that Mars does aspect that, and then the career does oppose that. So we can sort of see how, that may be a little bit of a play out there. It's like this push, pull, tug thing between maybe some of her own desires, her professional desires, and then, of course, the relationship as well. So there's a lot of technical things there as well there to consider as well. And maybe I've talked enough, so I thought I might throw it over to you, Kel, if you want to because I know we've talked a lot about this fourth house is very busy with that stellium there in the fourth house. So
yeah, no, thanks, Cass. And you're 100% right. There is so much going on here. And all I'm going to do is just build on what you said, because everything that you were saying is absolutely fantastic and exactly what I would say if I was looking at this chart. The moon, being the ruler of the first, is pushing onto or applying to the ruler of the seventh. And so that sort of is an indication that the person keeps coming towards relationships, or that they can meet new partners relatively easily. The one extra technical feature I'd add in, and this might be what you were alluding to, Cass, around Saturn. So in this chart, we've got a Capricorn descendant ruled by Saturn. So Saturn is going to describe the types of partners. Saturn's exalted in Libra, but Saturn is also what's known as the out of sect malefic, or the contrary to sect malefic in this chart. And this is a real contradiction in terms of Saturn being exalted indicates usually high quality or high caliber individuals in our lives. And then the out of sect malefic can often indicate potential problems or areas of tension and discord in our life. And so here we sort of see both the caliber of partner, but also the level of tension or discord that Meghan Markle's partners can sometimes bring into her life. And whether it's the partner themselves or circumstances around the partner, of course, that, we can sort of play around with those ideas. But it definitely looks like moon with the ascendant in Cancer is very focused on her partner and wants to move towards her partner, but there are complications there. I'm keeping this interpretation really focused on the current situation, because of course we could look a lot into Meghan's backstory and see other expressions of this as well.
Yeah. Totally.
So there's so much there. One of the other features I like is, this really is that triple conjunction with the moon, Saturn, and Jupiter. And that sort of pulls in the topics of the ninth house, where Jupiter rules Pisces, and also the sixth house. But we sort of see a really clear expression with the ninth house here, that the partner is someone who is from a different country. The partner is also someone who's from a different religious background. And for Meghan to go forward in this relationship, certainly at least initially, there was an indication that she would be looking to take up British citizenship. She did relocate, for a period of time, and will potentially still spend time in England going forward. But there was also a religious shift that had to happen for their marriage to take place in the Church of England as well. And so there's a lot of that energy there. Yeah, I don't know. Now I'm having the same feeling. Cass is like, we're talking for too long. Leash, do you want to jump in? Or Cass, do you have extra things you want to say?
Yeah, just one little thing I think that's kind of like worthwhile mentioning, bringing in these, so obviously we look to the ninth with Jupiter being part of that grouping down in the fourth and the sixth. And she's also, in this instance, brought in a partner, a husband, where I guess in some ways she would have been... there's a level of service that was expected as being a part of, the sixth house being a house of service or slavery or, having to dedicate oneself to perhaps what would have been a lesser position than what she felt she wanted. Or, it's like once she got in the castle, it was like, oh, this is just duty or sort of subordinacy or what have you. So we can see how that sixth house, also ruled by Jupiter, brought in that tie-in with the overseas partner as well.
Yeah, great point, Cass. Yeah, because there is a real sense of dedicating yourself to that larger goal, like serving daily for that larger mission or purpose, which I guess is basically the mission of the British royal family.
Yeah.
The royal family are literally servants to the nation.
Yeah.
And that's the sixth house denotes servants. So, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's a very important alignment in her chart, I think. And it's a great example of, that kind of mixed bag planet in the chart. I think when I teach off this chart, I often think, so most of us won't marry a prince, but, having an exalted planet ruling the seventh can indicate that you attract a partner who has stability or financial security or has a level of success of some kind connected to them. And that can look different, in different ways in different countries, but, there are sort of those definitions. But if it is also your out of sect malefic that rules the seventh house, there can be a complicating factor or three that, you know, sometimes you decide just to tolerate it. Like, this person's a great fit for me and they just have this one bad habit that I don't like. Other times the complications are larger and more substantial that you might need to take a stand with. So anything else that we want to say on Meghan's chart? I know we haven't looked at the whole chart. We're just sort of picking out some of the main features, but for time purposes, I thought we should move to Harry, but I wanted to make sure like you guys both had a chance to say what you want to say here.
I think the only thing I'd pick up is the fact that the fourth house is the private house. It's the private versus the public life. And, you know, what marrying a prince entailed is that their romance and their relationship was very much in the public eye. And so how uncomfortable that would have felt for her. You know, she would have wanted to actually keep things private behind closed doors, but having it portrayed and splashed across the UK media. And, you know, the UK media, especially when it comes to the royalty, are not kind.
No.
You know, there's stories literally of people walking in front of Diana and saying horrible things to her to try to get a rise out of her so then they could get a photo of her face. And I can imagine the same happened to Meghan. And as well, you know, just the fact that Venus in the third house there rules that fourth house, rules that moon, rules that Saturn and that Jupiter. You know, she wants to stay close to things. She wants to be in her neighborhood, things that she is comfortable with, things that are local to her. So, you know, being in this position where she's thrown into a foreign country, a foreign culture, a foreign power wouldn't have felt as comfortable to her as possible. So, yeah, that's the things I'd bring up.
Yeah,
Great
adding
points.
to the level of discomfort. Yeah, exactly. Adding to that level of discomfort is that Venus doesn't aspect that, so she doesn't offer any support. So she's in a not a great condition.
She's in
Venus is in a fall and in aversion to those fourth house planets too. So there's you know, a little bit more discomfort there as well.
Yeah. Cool.
So Harry now, I guess. A little bit of hazard.
Who would like to start the conversation on
the Ginger
Prince Harry while I get the chart going?
Well, you know, this is another chart that has the out of sect malefic playing out in it strongly, you know, just from a career standpoint. You know, we've got the Mars being the out of sect malefic ruling that Scorpio midheaven there in the 11th house. So, you know, he's very much someone whose career, because it falls in the 11th house, also includes 11th house activities, which is the greater good, the community, you know, larger groups, which definitely his role fits in. But that Mars is there in the 12th house. It doesn't express in an easy way. It's quite a private Mars. It's one that does want retreat and does want escape. So the fact that he's stepping back from his role and he's saying, actually, in many ways, I never felt comfortable with doing this role, makes a lot of sense to me. That's one of the kind of the first. I think that, you know, a lot of people are saying, well, you know, he's stepping back from this amazing position of power. Why would he want to do that? But to him, it's not. It's an area that feels uncomfortable because he's got this 12th house Mars ruling that. That's kind of, you know, in terms of what's going on right now, one of the important things. And the fact that as well, looking at his chart being ruled by that Saturn conjunct the midheaven, he's destined to be in that role. It's like who he is very much a part of what he has to do. But, you know, Saturn is about duty. Saturn is about responsibility. Saturn is about restriction in many ways. So there is that sense when he's out there and doing what he has to do as a prince, this role he feels like he was born into, it's holding him back and it's not being really who he wants to be. So, yeah, that was where I'd start that. Have you guys got anything to add in?
Kat?
So many things. You go first, Kel. Yeah. There's so many things there, isn't there?
So many things, yeah. I mean, Harry shares this Capricorn ascendant with Saturn in Scorpio conjunct the MC configuration with the Queen. So Queen Elizabeth II has exactly the same thing, Capricorn rising, Saturn in Scorpio on the MC. And there is a real sense of like dedication and duty that goes towards that. One of the ways I've interpreted Harry's MC ruler, Mars, in the 12th is that the types of work that he maybe enjoys the most or feels most called towards or passionate about are a combination of the Mars-Sag 12th house. His work in the military, which he did really enjoy. And I mean, I've been reading the internet about Meghan and Harry, of course, because I love a little bit of a royal story. And I didn't realize, but he was on a tour of duty in Afghanistan and he was pulled out because of a security risk. And the article I was reading sort of went to say that he never quite got over not being able to go as far as he wanted to in the military because of his position in the royal family. That's what it wasn't. I don't think it was a security risk for all the troops. It was just, him being a higher value target. But what Harry's done is he then parlayed that into this Olympic Games style event called the Invictus Games, where it's a sporting event for wounded veterans. So people who've served in the military and the armed forces around the world, and they come together, every couple of years for these sporting tournaments, which seems like a really fitting expression of Mars, the Mars in the 12th, like the wounded hero or the wounded warrior, thinking about the 12th house being, having themes of isolation or restriction or even marginalization is sometimes how we can see that type of placement. We do also, I should say everybody does. I've started to connect the 12th house as well to some topics to do with mental health type symptoms and experiences, and having Mars there would show a disturbed quality, especially when Mars is the out of sect malefic. And Harry's also been very vocal and outspoken about his own mental health struggles, but also sort of supporting his brother to a certain extent, because they both have these sort of tricky Mars placements tied to career for each of them. They both actually have Scorpio midheavens, and they're both day charts. So they both have these out of sect malefic ruled midheavens, and both of them have talked about wanting to create space, particularly for men, to talk about mental health matters. So I think there are things that he's trying to do that are meaningful for him, but might go against that Saturnian sort of family expectation or the towing the line, if you like. One of the other features that I love in Harry's chart is his descendant in Cancer. It's ruled by a very strongly placed moon in Taurus, which is on the IC and in the 5th house. And that can be an indication of someone who desperately wants stability in their relationship life or wants longevity, and also who really values having children as part of a relationship when the ruler of the 7th is in the 5th. What adds some intensity and potential for complications for Harry, of course, is having the moon and the north node there in the same sign, that to get what he really wants, there may be breaks with the past or breaks with tradition. And so, generally speaking, this is kind of a nice 7th house ruler placement, except there's a twist, or there is maybe an unexpected demand placed with that north node there on the moon. So it is quite interesting to me that Harry has spoken over the years about wanting to step away and keep that lower profile. I don't think that's a new request for him, but it's interesting for me that he's really pushed for it now after, marrying and having his first child. I think that's somehow the fact that he's now got a child and he's doing this, I think pulls on some of those themes of wanting to create that calm moon in Taurus 5th house experience for his own children.
Yeah. And I think as well that moon in the 5th really speaks to his romantic image with, he really was the playboy in many ways. For him, doing relationships was about pleasure, getting into that fun space with people. And he got himself in quite a lot of hot water with that.
Yes.
So, that kind of talks to that moon in Taurus too. And he was very private about that, even with his past relationship with Chelsea Davy. He did, he wanted to keep things totally private with her and really protect her. And I think as well, again, he's got that moon conjunct the IC. It's in the 5th house, but it's down in the roots of the chart there. So again, he's someone who wants to keep his relationship life private. He wants to keep it out of the public eye. He wants to keep it separate from everything. And it's like pulled in these two directions of, okay, do I do what the family expectations do, or do I do what I need to do? And that very Taurian, I'm just going to stick with my line and stick to it and not change easily. I know it's not a sign-based conjunction, but the fact that Taurus is starting to play out in this, Uranus is starting to play out in this part of his chart, and this has been where a lot of the shake-up has happened. Archie has been born in the time since Uranus moved into that area of his chart. It's really shifting and changing how he does that moon in Taurus. So, yeah.
Super juicy. Cass, anything from you on Harry's chart before we segue into some timing?
I think you girls have so well covered the highlights there. So, the major points and, I guess, another, level that we can take this. It's like, with Harry, his IC and the Moon North Node, they're all looking to Venus, who's in rulership. So it does show, he comes from a well-resourced family, and he's, in terms of, the emotional, the relationship side of things, he's also got a fairly decently resourced partner as well. She's quite established in her own right, and, Meghan's, was doing her own thing and worth, a reasonable amount of money. So she wasn't, in fall, so to speak. So, yeah, there's also got that beautiful Venus right up there in that 10th house too.
Absolutely. So for timing, do we want to stay with Harry or do we want to switch back to Meghan? Which chart would you girls like to do timing on?
Oh, I'm either
I
or.
thought we were going to have a quick look at their synastry as well, like just some connections between the charts.
Okay, yeah, let's do that quickly because I know we're like just having such great conversations that we're not fast.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you guys go talk about that and I'll get the charts on the screen.
Okay, cool. Well, go Lishi.
I've already pointed to that fact that both of them have the moon on the IC. So that's one of the first things. They're both, when it comes to their emotional lives, and the fact that their moons play very strongly in their lives. One of them has a Capricorn rising with a Cancer descendant, and the other one is the opposite. It's flipped the other way. So the moon is very strongly linked into who they are and who they want to be with. It's very private. They don't want to be playing out in the media. And especially for Harry, his past, his mother, the history with the media is not great. And so he's gone straight into protective mode when it comes to this. And he's gone straight into, okay, I just want to pull myself in and pull my family in, pull my children in, and be safe away from this media frenzy that can happen. I kind of don't blame him.
Yeah.
And as well, just the fact that her Mars sits on his Descendant, she
Ascendant,
has.
You mean? Meghan's.
Meghan's Mars sits on Harry's
yeah.
Descendant.
Yeah.
She has separated him, or the relationship she's had with him, whether, we don't know the ins and outs, but the relationship she's had with him, the end result is it's separating him. Initially, it separated him from a lot of his friends, and now it's separating him from his family. So there is that severing effect of Mars that we're seeing on his intimate and close relationships, and, the people he's connected to in that way, and the fact that she is becoming the all and everything for him in that area of his chart.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you have anything to add in, girls, about the synastry? I'm sure you've got lots.
Yeah, well, there's a few kind of sign-based conjunctions. We've got his sun, her Venus. So that sort of is usually kind of a positive connection. When you're working with relationships, the essence of who he is and the things that she finds aesthetic or attractive, are kind of, they're on the same frequency or on the same page, if you like. And then his Venus in Libra is, right up there in her 4th house. So, he's, in there with all of that sort of thing. So again, we've got those kind of sign-based connections, which is showing that, they're on the same page with things. He's, his Venus, which is the ruler of his moon, is there with her moon. So when it comes to, I guess, the emotions or even some of the reactionary responses, we can see that there's this feeling around it that they're like in this huddle and they're in it together. And it's like us against them, with all of this real tightness. We're not saying that every chart is like that, but this seems like to be how maybe it's a little bit playing out. They're like really on the same page with each other with so many things.
Totally. I mean, the Venus, I see with the Venus too, it's quite close. Like Harry's Venus at 17 Libra is quite close to Meghan's Pluto.
Pluto, yeah.
Yeah, at 21 Libra. And that's that sort of magnetic, intense, instant, all-consuming, totally transforming, life-changing type of connection. And in some ways, their relationship did play out, there was quite a quick progression from starting to date to getting engaged to, they didn't waste any time, which may be kind of how normal average people do it, but is very different from how things tend to happen in the royal sphere, if you like. But that speaks to some of that kind of very compelling Venus-Pluto. Some of the other synastry links that caught my eye, we've got Harry's Saturn at 12 Scorpio makes a square aspect to Meghan's Sun, which is at like almost 12 Leo. And that can put a real sense of like the cement or the glue that, I do like to see a Saturn contact by synastry because it does give some longevity. It can stabilize things, but it does bring a gravitas and that what feels like structure and safety and stability early in a relationship can sometimes feel a bit heavy or restricting the longer the relationship goes on. So as much as it's generally helping with the binding, committing sort of quality, it is something just to be aware of there. The Saturn in Scorpio is potentially containing the Sun in Leo, but does that sometimes feel like restraint or limitation? That would be sort of the question that I would explore if this was a couple's client that I was working with.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And as well, I mean, 3 degrees, you've also got Harry's Mars is square her Venus. And I always like to see, Venus-Mars connections in some synastry as well. I mean, it could be a bit of friction, but it's that kind of friction that creates some chemistry. And it's like in the working out and the trying to understand each other from those points of view, it keeps things fresh. It keeps things alive. It keeps the chemistry going.
Yeah, Venus-Mars aspects are certainly good for juicy sparks, shall we say.
Just kind of add a little bit of sugar on top to the Venus-Pluto. Just intensifies it a little bit more, makes it a little bit more, that forbidden fruit, I can't stay away and,
Spicy.
that type of thing. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
As I've said before, we need friction for pleasure.
Yes. Oh my gosh, love it. I mean, a couple of brief other synastry aspects I'll just mention. We don't have to spend a lot of time interpreting them at all, but just to point them out for our listeners. Harry's moon at 21 Scorpio, relatively in a tight opposition to Meghan's Uranus at 21 Taurus to 26 Scorpio. So that creates a relationship that has a revolutionary quality that's going to, rock a few boats along the way. And then Meghan's Neptune, relatively close to Harry's Mars, but even stronger, making a tight square aspect to Harry's Sun. So that sense of like giving things up or losing identity, lots of compassion, but also that sense of a lack of clarity that can come out in a relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I call that a bit of a pedestal aspect often with Neptune. It's like putting a partner up on a pedestal and hoping it doesn't topple.
Yeah, and of course they always do, and it's just what happens when they do fall down.
Or have feet of clay.
Exactly. So for timing, is there more that either of you want to say on the synastry?
No, let's get on to the timing.
Okay. Do we want natal charts and just talk about transits and perfections to start? Do we want progress charts? I know we probably should have decided that before we got on air. I mean, I can draw the progress bits on to maybe, keep it. Okay, let's keep going. Who wants to start? I mean, this is where it gets so juicy.
Well, Cass, you brought it up. I mean, it's the progressed Mars on Harry's. So Harry's progressed Mars on Harry's ascendant, and the fact that that's opposite Meghan's Mars sitting on Harry's descendant, that just speaks of all cutting things off to me and pushing his way out of things. It's like the way he asserts things in many ways actually draws on her Mars. It's like because she's there and it's like, okay, I don't know, there just is this sense of the two Marses opposite each other. Like I just get this heat in the connection between them, and maybe they're spinning the wheels together and heating and inflaming things too much to a certain point. I don't know. That's just me pretending I'm a fly on the wall. Cass, what did you want to say about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the ruler of his midheaven is now on his ascendant. So, we could just encapsulate this quite simply, like, I'm my career now. I am my own life direction now. I'm calling the shots now. And, as the chart contrasect malefic, like this may not be done in a way that is subtle or a way that is, the ideal way to do the things he's done. So we can sort of see it at some level, what appears to be sort of, really cut and run or a cut and sever, and sort of sudden as well. So, obviously in the pipeline for a while, but as it's come up over the ascendant, it's like, boom, I am just doing my own thing now. So, this is a rare transit. It's not something that happens to everybody. And of course, it doesn't always rule like a sensitive degree, like a midheaven. So, this is going to really show, Harry's career taking on a new phase or a new direction as well. This is, him coming out of the shadow a little bit, or maybe out from, because, coming up over that ascending degree, it's sort of like, really infusing that energy of Mars in a really pure way, because on the ascendant here, it's not interacting with a planet. So it's like he's perhaps getting hot under the collar or wanting to, cut, sever, and all of those sort of things. And it's kind of what he's done. So, yeah, interesting. I wonder if, like, that hadn't been a factor in his chart right now, would it have, events had roll out the way that they did. So,
yeah.
Your thoughts, Kel?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, the progressed Mars, I do find it very significant when any of the progressed planets conjunct an angle. It's very good for the planet. So Mars is now expressing and manifesting and showing up in Harry's life in a more obvious, clear, conscious way than it ever has before. And we're seeing that. I think the other signature that sort of speaks to the activation of Mars in the chart right now, Harry is 35, and so he's in a 12th house year by perfection. So his Time Lord is his Jupiter in Capricorn, which is a planet that is in fall. So that it's that sense of maybe adjusting to potentially a loss of something, like a loss of support or a loss of resources or a loss of even, prestige. And I'm not saying that's definitely what's happened, but we can see indications of having to be financially responsible for things that they weren't in the past, that type of thing. And I always find it very significant when someone perfects by age into a house that has multiple planets, and especially, we've got Harry perfecting into the house that holds Uranus and Mars and Neptune. And Mars and Uranus, as we've mentioned in other episodes, both of those planets have these dramatic sort of shake-ups, tension energies. So we can really see that idea of not being afraid to make a shocking choice or change. And with Neptune there, the qualities of having to let go or lose some things along the way. And we've seen that a little bit in the negotiations with Harry and the palace, that, they kind of wanted to keep one foot in the royal camp and then get their freedom too. But the criteria that came down from the Queen was like it's one or the other. There isn't really a middle ground. And Harry did have to let go of his military appointments, which I think was quite a disappointment and not his preference. So it's like that need for the freedom that we've talked about in Harry's chart that's in the natal chart being spotlighted as a major theme for this year that he's 35. And, you know, what price is he willing to pay for that freedom?
Yeah. And look, one of the things as well about that perfected Lord is the fact that he's having a Jupiter return. He's just had one. And when he left the military was back in 2008, which was, you know, when he last had that Jupiter return. And it's like now he's finding his whole new feet with something different, something he's doing on his own again. So it's a sense of, okay, what is this new cycle? What do I need to do? What do I need to create with this? And the other thing too, with having Mars in that house and everything we were saying about the progressed Mars, that progressed Mars rules his fourth house too. So there is a sense of, okay, I'm creating my own family right now as well, not just my own career, but my own family. And I'm separating out from the family that I'm already a big part of. So they're the two things I'd add to that.
Cass, any more that you want to throw in about Harry and timing?
Yeah, not at this level. Oh, actually, yeah, maybe one other thing. Sorry. Now, I think he's in the balsamic moon phase by secondary progression. So looking at the secondary progressed lunar phase. So he is in a cycle of, you know, closure, completion, and, you know, potential loss or things being thin on the ground at the moment. And I guess, you know, as he progresses through lunar phases, you know, there is, you know, the moon is also the ruler of the seventh. So, yeah, but there is, you know, generally speaking, this is, you know, when people go into the balsamic moon phase, they're ready to kind of shed the things that are, you know, not working for them anymore. They're ready to lighten their load or let go of things simply because they just don't have the energy perhaps to keep holding on to them. So now that he's kind of free of the royal family, it's almost like now that Mars is like, oh, okay, you know, I can do what I want now rather than what I was born to do. And the fact that his moon also is there with the IC, he has kind of let go of his family a little bit through a part of this phase. So, you know, and he might have to kind of like be in the dark a little bit as the moon is symbolically speaking right now. So it may feel a little bit depressive for him. It may feel a little bit, you know, like finding his way again for a little while. It's sometimes these things when we want to do something and then the reality bites and then it's like, well, this isn't kind of how I thought it was going to be. So we might even find Harry at some level might lay low for a little bit before he kind of really gets his mojo on as, you know, a new public identity, I guess, because did they actually get stripped of their titles? I'm not sure what the update was. So they've still got their Sussex brand, so to speak.
Yeah. It's a little unclear exactly what they can do with them. I like that balsamic moon phase, Cass, because I do think there is that hermit energy and they are sort of pulling back in a certain way. Neptune is squaring Mars in Harry's chart right now as well. So just to add to the different levels of activation for Mars.
Yeah.
And if we think about Mars as the career planet or the career ruler, Neptune to Mars is definitely a low energy, lethargic cycle, but also a time of great confusion and uncertainty. And I guess I'm very curious, you know, this arrangement of going to Canada for a while that's been made has sort of this 12-month review and renew option on it. And I'm very curious as to whether it is made permanent or whether it allows some of these, you know, need to take a break themes that are quite strong in Harry's chart. It gives them space for that, and whether they, you know, it's almost like we're coming back after some of these cycles, like after Harry's not in a 12-house perfection, after Neptune's not squaring Mars, just to see whether we want to stay here or
it's
not.
like when the fog clears a little bit, let's make more choices that we can kind of, you know, it's never good to make a choice with the Neptune influence. So, Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mars has had a little bit of time to marinate on the ascendant there too, because, this is an energy that isn't just the fly by the seat of the pants. It's something that's going to sort of play there for a couple of years.
Cool. Leish, anything more on Harry's timing for you?
Just the fact that he's like any Capricorn rising right now, and probably waiting for Saturn to move the hell out of Capricorn, and the South Node as well. So, there has been that the last 2 years have been tricky and difficult, and he's faced challenges and tests. And what year did they get married, Kel?
2018.
Was it? Yeah, I was going to say, but that's not last year, but it's not. It's nearly 2 years ago.
It was just before
2018. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this has all been in there. There's been a sense of responsibility and duty and, what marriage brings in as part of it, but what's been connected with that marriage and everything that's had to happen. He's had to face a lot of challenges and questioned a lot in the last 2 years. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens when Saturn moves into Aquarius and how that plays out in his chart and what lifts up. So I think what we'll see in his chart over the next few months, especially in his life from, March through to July, it'll be really interesting. It'll kind of give us a bit of an insight into what the potential is for the next few years for him.
Cool. So timing for Meghan. What are your girls' thoughts on this?
Okay.
You go, Kel. You go, Kaz.
Well, I guess one thing that really stood out was, as I mentioned, Harry's in the balsamic moon phase, and I'm pretty sure Meghan's in the full moon. So from a lunar phase perspective, they're on really opposite ends of the spectrum. So the full moon phase often does, heighten relationship, which of course is
Cass, I think she might be in the one before the full moon.
So the gibbous moon.
The gibbous moon, yes. Yeah,
okay,
I always forget the name of that one.
I've got her progressed sun at 11 degrees and her progressed moon at 11 degrees Leo, her progressed moon at 22 Aquarius.
Her progressed sun
couldn't be at Leo. You mean
Oh,
Virgo?
sorry. No, Virgo. Yeah, you're right. It is gibbous. I'm looking at the wrong circle.
Okay.
No worries.
Yeah. But I mean, despite that, the gibbous moon is still
it's very
waxing.
similar.
Still,
yes, of course. It's completely opposite.
It's still got a massive load of light. And one of the analogies I often use working with people when they're in this phase, it's like when you can relate to this one, Leisha, when you're out on the surf, right? And the gibbous moon phase is really like preparing for that wave to come in. And you feel that sense in the water change. You get on the board and you're paddling. So there's probably she's really like wanting to prepare for something. She's wanting to, maybe dot the I's and cross the T's in some part of her life where she really wants to reach up to that full moon and what that symbolizes for her. So there is perhaps planning, strategy, I would, to somebody who didn't marry into the royal family, it might be like, is there something you have to go back and finish or just do that one more course so you can get that qualification so you can then kind of launch into that full moon phase. There is this essence of something about her needing to perfect or improve upon in order to get to the next level, in that full spotlight, that full illumination that she will be reaching to in the full moon phase. So, when she's in that full moon phase, it's really going to kind of, be that sort of tension point and maybe a turning point or a culmination of something for her.
Yeah. I like that. I always call it like the understudy who's, kind of getting ready to have the main role on the stage, but they've still got to learn the lines
intern.
and do all of that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So maybe that's her voiceover role.
Who knows? I mean, Meghan also has her descendants at 24 Capricorn, which is where transiting Pluto is starting to activate this year, very close to the Saturn-Pluto conjunction degree of January. But as we mentioned in our year ahead workshop, Jupiter will conjunct Pluto 3 times this year, and 2 of those conjunctions will be at 24 Capricorn.
Yes.
So that sort of need to adjust the power balance in a significant relationship is a huge theme for Meghan right now, which of course we're seeing.
And so she's 38, so she's in third house perfection this year.
Yes.
And sorry, I just want to talk back to that quick point as well. Like this was all announced right on that lunar eclipse at 20 degrees of Cancer back in January as well. So there was that kind of really unexpected nature of this coming out, even though it had been stirring in the background. That eclipse, really, that lunar eclipse, which sat across her chart, her ascendant, descendant, and the moon is so linked into who she is that it was kind of this like, okay, let's announce now. Let's just do this thing, probably without thinking out from what we can see and having the conversations with the royal family that the royal family would have preferred.
Totally. Cass, you were going to say about being 38 and third house year?
Yeah, so she's in a third house perfection year, which turns on Mercury in her birth chart. Which is, I guess, there's a bit of a duality there with how we could look at the position of Mercury. So technically, it is combust the sun, but the sun is in its own chariot, so to speak, or it's, the sun is in its domicile there in Leo. So it kind of gives Mercury perhaps like a little bit of protection or a little bit of immunity from the combustion. So it's leaning into the sun in a pretty good state. So this might also, maybe get, Meghan might come out of this perfection year a little bit scathed, but not as bad as what it could be with, if this had have been the sun in a different sign, for example. So what are your girls' takes on combustions when the sun or the combusted planet is in its own sign?
Yeah, so I think there is a thinking in the Hellenistic tradition that when the sun is in Aries or Leo, Mercury is spared from, like Mercury specifically seems to be a little spared from the effects of combustion. Yeah. I haven't totally seen that play out in practice, but I do know that it is part of the theory, part of the body of knowledge. When I think about this planet as Meghan's Time Lord, and I think about some of the almost inconsistent messaging that's coming out of the Harry and Meghan camp, it does make me think there is a little bit of something skewy here, because on the one hand, we want privacy, but on the other hand, we're going to need to make our own money, so we're going to have a level of exposure. And I'm not sure that they've quite grappled with it, which I think is why the messaging sounds like they're saying one thing and doing another. Yeah. And I think this speaks a little bit to it. There are other planets in Meghan's chart that I think can give us a clearer picture without the complications. And it'll be interesting when we can get one of those planets to speak, or be the perfected Time Lord. Yeah. Juicy.
And also the fact that Venus is being highlighted because it's in that third house. So the fact that that's so tied into their synastry and it rules that fourth house there for her, family is key this year. Family is important. And I do feel like in many ways she is behind a lot of the messaging that has had to happen. It's like, not that Harry's in the firing line, but he was the one left to deal with the royal family while she went back to Archie in Canada. So it's like that behind the scenes thing that can happen with that Mercury when it's combust is playing out in that way too. Okay, well, you deal with your family and I'll just be back over here with our family, back in my neighborhood in where I'm comfortable in Canada.
Totally. So the final thing that I want to say on Meghan's chart, and then I'll, we can wrap up, or if you girls have more, is her progressed Venus is at 28 54 Libra right now. And by January of 2021, that Venus is going to progress into Scorpio. And there's quite a strong dignity change for Venus. She's in rulership right now in Libra, and then she will be in detriment in Scorpio. And I'm just really interested to see what kind of change in the quality of her life or in the experience of her home environment. Does she get the privacy she wants because the ruler of the fourth is now in Scorpio? What does she have to give up from a public perspective to facilitate that? But it is interesting that we've got a major change by progression of the ruler of the fourth, and we are looking at this like relocation of countries storyline playing out. What else do you guys want to say on Megan's chart? I know we've done a longer than planned episode, but that's sometimes the way with two charts. So anything that either of you want to add in here?
Yeah,
just on that.
Yes. Go on, Leishy.
Oh, just a quick one, just on that last piece you were saying as well there, Cal. The fact that Venus will be moving into her fifth house. It will be moving into the house of its joy. So while it is kind of losing something in terms of moving into its detriment, it is moving into a house it's very comfortable in. So there is this sense of maybe having to do some hard work or work to, when she starts to play to her weaknesses and work on her weaknesses, that could be where she gets some real juice and some real ability to shine.
Cass?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, it could be kind of like a, like a bit of a trade-off. I lose something, but I gain something else or, but yeah, definitely like just having the rule of the force, just at a very simplistic level, is showing that there's going to be some, really significant change and perhaps a significant dip in status in whatever her home environment, brings her. So again, does she get what she wants, the seclusion, or is it, or does she end up, back in Los Angeles and living that kind of life that she also enjoys? So yeah, there'll definitely be some shifts and changes on the home front for sure.
Is this another baby? Maybe.
Could be.
Lots of possibilities. Oh my God, such a great deep dive on these charts. Anything else you guys want to say on these charts, or do you want to share what you've got coming up over the next little while for our audience?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what have you got happening, Leishy? Anything in the pipeline?
No, I've got a webinar in the pipeline, but not 100% sure on date or what topic it will be. So, yeah, I will talk more. Keep an eye on social media for the webinar that will be next week.
Cool.
Cass?
I'm still running my beginners program, I guess, as you are as well, Kel.
I am. I'm just thinking I wanted to mention a couple of different things just because I know we might have listeners watching this throughout the year. At NORWAC coming up, which is a big astrology conference in Seattle at the end of May, I'm actually doing a one-day post-conference workshop called The Predictive Pot of Gold, combining transits and progressions in your forecasting work. So if anybody does want to learn a little bit more about some of the timing techniques that we've shared today, I'll be teaching on that in Seattle in May. Anything else that you guys know that you're working on this year that you want to share with our audience at all?
Well, maybe I'll save my juicy Megan Fedaria tidbits for my ESA lecture.
Okay.
So, at ESA in Colorado, Denver, Colorado, in September. I'm delivering 2 lectures there, and I remember that one is on the Fedaria cycles, where Megan will be a feature. And so Fedaria is an ancient Persian timing technique. So that's one big thing that's coming up in September this year. And you're coming with us, Leishy. You're coming to ESA too.
Yes. So, that's going to be a super exciting event, Denver in September. And we're all going to be at an astrology conference together, which we've not had the experience of yet.
No, we haven't.
No, we haven't. So
it's going to be exciting.
Watch out, Denver, for all the water.
Yeah. Leisha, is there anything you wanted to share with the audience? I can't remember if you did that or not.
Just that I am doing a monthly webinar series this year. So if there are specific topics that you would like some deep dives within for me to explore, I will be doing something on outer planet transits and midlife out of planet transits and how they can play out. And I'll also be just doing something on career planets. So yeah, just keep an eye on my social media or subscribe to my newsletter list to be able to be part of all of those.
Fantastic. And then I know one of the things we want to do as part of our like extra episode each month is a Q&A episode. So if any of our listeners, if you're watching and you've got questions that you would like us to answer on a Q&A episode, definitely pop them in the comments below. And that way we'll be able to give you more.
Yeah. So it'll be like a quick 5-minute, like snappy answer once a month.
Fantastic. So I guess that's it for this week.
It is.
Or this episode.
So I hope everyone enjoys this, our first of these kind of masterclass deep dives. And please leave your comments below, any thoughts you may have. And of course, hit that subscribe button no matter where you are.
Cass,
awesome.
Anything final from you?
Just I hope you enjoyed it and look forward to catching you in the next episode.
Just awesomeness.
Alrighty.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks,
Bye,
everyone. Bye.